MonsterVerse Rodan exploded onto screens in Godzilla King of the Monsters, starring in what I would consider the best action sequence of the entire legendary series. Though like the destructive disasters the living volcano shares his natural abilities with, Rodan has since entered a period of cinematic dormancy, which begs the question, what if Rodan wasn't relegated to a single film, and he remained a more prominent character throughout the MonsterVerse? How, you ask? By exploring what if Rodan evolved. Now this is the third and final part of this series, at least until Supernova comes out in 2027, so my hope is you've seen the first and second parts respectively. But to briefly recap the end of part 2, Godzilla and Mechagodzilla were essentially clashing in Hong Kong. There is no Kong, no ally for Godzilla to call upon, but he is holding his own, being supercharged and at full power for this fight. Meanwhile, an evolved Rodan soars high above Hong Kong, weighing his options. Would he come to Godzilla's aid, hoping his previous stint as Molten Alpha and the resulting confrontations with the world's current Atomic Alpha can be forgiven? Or would Rodan attempt to reclaim the throne once more, seeing this moment as perhaps his final chance to get rid of Godzilla? Ally or enemy? Paragon or renegade? A hard choice to decide, which is why I allowed you, yes, you, the audience, to answer that question for me. And decide you did. With 79% of the vote, you all wanted Rodan to assist Godzilla, and obliged that story choice, I shall, especially after some very convincing arguments in the comments below. My favorite of which has to be from Galork3267, who said ultimately Rodan's pride would not let Godzilla die. He would not want any excuses for earning his alpha status. Short, simple, to the point, and I think spot on for Rodan's character. One last thing before I officially dive into part 3 is I do want to announce that I will be creating a few shorts to cover Rodan's renegade path. So if you were part of the 21% that wanted to see what would happen if Rodan reclaimed his throne, then keep an eye out for some shorts that should be coming out in the next few weeks. Though I am on vacation right now, so they might be like towards the end of September, just as a heads up. Now we return to the battle between raging leviathans of scale and metal respectively. Before Godzilla or Mechagodzilla can prove which is superior, a molten demon descends between two gods and crashes headfirst into Mechagodzilla, letting loose a molten eruption. Mechagodzilla suffers a crippling blow from Rodan's surprise attack, and though Mechagodzilla attempts to fight back, the mechanical ghost of Ghidorah is no match for the combined might of a supercharged Godzilla and an evolved Rodan. Steel snaps, fires bloom within the shell of metal. Mechagodzilla falls to the wayside. King Ghidorah's short-lived revival at an end. And yet, tension remains in the air. Rodan keeps his distance, clearly demonstrating that he doesn't want to go for another round for the titular Titan crowd. Yes, the Molten Demon is prideful, but at this point, he suffered enough fair losses to know he can't win a 1v1 with a supercharged Godzilla. And he would rather allow a truce to form between the Titans than keep this cat and mouse game he's experienced the last few years ongoing. So as Rodan watches nervously from afar, Godzilla finally bestows his judgment. Godzilla won't hunt Rodan any longer, but that does not mean he can stay on the surface. Like all of Godzilla's problems, he wants this rivalry buried, and the best way to do that is ordering Rodan to the Hollow Earth. Given this lifeline, Rodan does not hesitate to accept and ventures beneath the surface to the wild, untamed lands below. At first, I can see Rodan absolutely loving this deal. I mean, first off, he doesn't have to worry about Godzilla, and he can essentially rule the underworld as if he were an alpha. Scratch out Kong's name, because the Hollow Earth is Rodan's domain. There are plenty of Titans for him to challenge, to bend the knee, new creatures to face or hordes to hunt. So for a time, Rodan relishes Exile, relishes being a pseudo-alpha. That is, until he doesn't. What I'm about to say is complete conjecture, but it seems like the surface of the Earth is prime real estate for Titans. Camazot's the Scar King. We see plenty of monsters in MonsterVerse media do everything in their power to carve a chunk of the surface for themselves when the Hollow Earth is mostly unconquered land, free for any to divide and claim. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying though. Plenty call the Hollow Earth home, but usually we just see the single one-off Titans at the surface, while in the Hollow Earth, the environment appears more conducive for creatures that aren't particularly powerful, just numerous. This preference in environment, or at least stubbornness of the Titans, I think will eventually drive Rodan a bit mad over the following months. The Molten Demon will realize, even as a king of the underworld, what he truly desires is a place under the heavens, under a starlit sky. Thus, shenanigans once again ensue between Godzilla and Rodan. I can see Rodan testing Godzilla's limits. A breach here, a momentary flyby out of the Hollow Earth there. Problem is, each time, Rodan retreats when he hears a distant roar of one annoyed alpha. Godzilla isn't giving Rodan any slack here. Rodan is unequivocally stuck for the time being in the Hollow Earth. Rodan also just can't beat another Mechagodzilla. He needs to win Godzilla over somehow, and show him he's an ally. Okay, well, maybe not an ally, maybe just show that he won't be a thorn in the alpha's side anymore. One that he can allow to come out of the Hollow Earth, maybe just on occasion. A few decades or centuries would probably mend this rift, but the Molten Demon's lack of patience and rebuilding pride keeps him from considering such an option. Thus, the avian begins to scheme, his sights set on Kong. Moving over to the Great Ape for a sec, as discussed in part 2, Monarch and Apex venture through the Hollow Earth portal on Skull Island with the Guardian, allowing Kong to discover his species' roots, while also keeping him out of the fight between Godzilla and Mechagodzilla. No doubt after that fight, he would return to Skull Island. The protective storm wall is still in place, the Iwi still very much alive. And yet, it's obvious to Gia and just about everyone who lays their sights on the Guardian, Kong isn't happy. He wants to go back to the Hollow Earth. He wants to find his family. Yes, Kong can explore the Hollow Earth just as he did in Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. Problem is, he can't go too far or be away too long from Skull Island. Skull crawlers and other threats still exist. Not to mention Camazotz is still out there, and he could return at any time. Well, he could return as long as it's night. Kong would not and cannot abandon those that need his protection, that represent the closest thing to family that he does actually possess. So while on one of his short explorative journeys in the Hollow Earth, he's caught completely off guard when the danger he's supposed to protect Skull Island from descends upon him, Camazotz. The Great Ape immediately readies for a fight, merely for Camazotz to do the unthinkable, bow. Taken aback by the act, Kong is also caught off guard when Rodan descends too, clearly smug over the situation. The message though from Rodan is quite clear. Camazotz is no longer a threat. See, Rodan has a way to curry favor with Godzilla. He's going to win over one of Godzilla's allies, or at least someone he thinks is Godzilla's ally. Again, Kong and Godzilla did fight together in part 2, so Rodan is really grasping at straws at this point. If Rodan knew of Mothra or knew where she was in the Hollow Earth, she'd be the first target. Problem is, the Queen of the Monsters is just too elusive, so Kong will have to suffice. And what better gift is there to reset Rodan and Kong's new relationship than Rodan besting Camazotz in a 1v1, compelling the supposed devil to submit to him just as the Molten Demon did to Godzilla, and then forcing the giant bat to cancel his claim on Skull Island. And to Rodan's annoyance, while Kong begrudgingly realizes what's going on, the Great Ape just beats a hasty retreat and returns to Skull Island, mainly from the ape's perspective, just to ensure everything is okay after the strange and confusing run-in with what he thought were two enemies. Weeks pass. Rodan attempts again and again to curry Kong's favor, only to be ignored or shut down every time. Fire burns within the avian's blood. Pride and a dwindling amount of patience tempts Rodan to just force Kong to do what he wants, like Camazotz. Though watching Kong sulk around from afar, the avian finally puts two and two together on what is actually Kong's greatest desire: a family. So to the air Rodan ascends, soaring over thousands of miles, searching far and wide for others like Kong. And in this effort, Rodan would be incredibly effective. I mean, birds are renowned for their excellent vision, able to spot prey from grand distances. So when this trait is coupled with Rodan's ability to fly somewhere around Mach 1, what you have is a creature that is able to circumvent the Hollow Earth in a relatively short amount of time. New titans submit on the way, new lands uncovered, and yet, to Rodan's frustration, no apes are found. But he does have one last lead. He can sense a power like that of Godzilla. Something stirs beneath the Hollow Earth. And perhaps in this subterranean pocket, Rodan can find what he's looking for. All that he needs is a way in. The Axis Mundi system can't really help him here, considering this is a locked off chamber. And I don't think Rodan is one to burrow. The only real option left for the Molten Demon to do is to swim. Well, swim through molten rock. Magma chambers or perhaps currents of molten rock which flow through the lower mantle or outer core should be perfect for Rodan to use. And thanks to Rodan's evolved form, if he couldn't withstand the greater temperatures and pressure of the outer core before, he should be able to now. Thus, Rodan traverses beneath the earth and pops out in a chamber filled to the brim with those like Kong. Immediately, Rodan is set upon by the tribe's guards, so he never gets a look at what he senses within the chamber covered by flowing lava. But it's not like these apes actually represent a threat. Mostly, Rodan is just trying not to kill them so he can avoid ticking off Kong. He grabs a small orange ape, since smaller prey are easy to manage and fly with, and beats it out of the lair, just as the Scar King gazes upon him. Seeing a new trophy to add to his collection, the Scar King summons a war party to give chase, with Shimo at the lead. Meanwhile, Rodan is kinda in a tough spot because that inability for him to think ahead is once again biting him in a land that the sun does not shine. He can't exit the way he came or else Zuko will be torched. He needs to make his own exit, and there is one Titan that can lend him a hand in this situation, Camazotz. Rodan ascends to the highest point of the subterranean chamber and calls the devil. Above, Camazotz hears Rodan's calls through the rock, probably the only Titan that could, and begins to burrow while Rodan unleashes his own unmatched power. The ground gives way. Rodan ascends through the opening, while unbeknownst to everyone in the Hollow Earth, Godzilla is livid. But more on that train wreck in a little bit. For now, Rodan once again reunites with Kong. Rodan gives Kong a furry terrified gift, Zuko. The tiny ape immediately hides behind Kong for protection, and sensing his plan will work with himself and Camazotz not in the picture, Rodan gives the pair some space. Everything has gone according to Rodan's master plan, and Kong would no doubt be absolutely grateful for Rodan. Oh right, them. You know, at this point, I think Rodan is his own worst enemy in these what-ifs. Using the opening Rodan created, the Scar King leads his war party into the Hollow Earth. Small detachments break away to search for Rodan, or a gateway merely to run into Kong. They attack, he wins. And just like in Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, Kong goes on a journey with Zuko. Well, a far shorter journey to find the rest of the troop. Even without seeing the cruelty the Scar King displayed in the ape lair, I don't think Kong and the cruel tyrant would get along, especially when Kong sees how Shimo is treated. Tension leads to conflict, with the Scar King and Kong battling it out. Though with Shimo nearby, the moment the Scar King isn't in control, he sicks his ultimate weapon on Kong. Icy power builds within a frost-covered maw, merely for a surge of molten power to shut it down. Rodan has arrived to battle Shimo. A dead Kong would not really help Rodan with his efforts to win over Godzilla. Besides, Rodan would not miss a chance to duke it out with a Titan that he can tell is essentially his natural elemental rival. A destructive dance of fire and ice soon engulfs the battlefield, yet even with Shimo distracted, Kong is still outnumbered heavily here. Luckily, further aid descends from the skies. And no, not Mothra. Gia isn't here to summon her, and it's doubtful the Hollow Earth Iwi Temple would be the location of this battle. Instead, aid descends on leathery wings as Camazotz enters the fray. Yeah, look, Camazotz isn't doing this out of the kindness of his black heart or anything. He's essentially doing the bidding of Rodan. Remember, he's essentially in the same role Rodan was in under King Ghidorah in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Though while Camazotz is forced in this situation to fight, he's no doubt enjoying himself, just as Rodan was enjoying himself fighting Mothra. The devil tears through the Scar King's guards, the bat's minions perhaps causing a bit of chaos themselves for the Scar King and Shimo. So can this unlikely trio take the win? I would argue yes, but unlike in Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, this is a far closer fight, and one where sheer power can't be relied upon, aka Godzilla. Rodan is easily in the toughest spot. He has no chance of matching Shimo physically, and if she were going for the kill, he'd be dead rather quickly. Luckily, Shimo's relative dislike of conflict, coupled with Rodan's radiant heat, which should offer better protection against Shimo's frostbite breath than even what evolved Godzilla had, allows him to stay a constant thorn in this Ice Godzilla's side. Because ultimately, if there's one thing you should take away from this what if, is that Rodan can really be a thorn in anyone's side given the opportunity. Kong meanwhile can probably contend with the Scar King in a 1v1 given enough time, something the Scar King would do his best not to allow. Though with Kong having not fought Godzilla, he would actually be better off here in this fight. Kong doesn't know the Royal Axe can absorb Hollow Earth energy, or at least Godzilla's atomic ray. You may think having less experience is worse, but actually it just means Kong is more likely to evade Shimo's breath than to try and absorb it with his weapon. A small detail, but one which should again offer Kong better odds in a long drawn out fight, though the biggest edge for either party has to be Camazotz here, specifically the bat's lethality. Camazotz will have no qualms at killing the Scar King's war party, and when blood starts to stain the earth, for a group conditioned by fear, I think terror will spur the brutish war apes to run for their lives. A 3v2 this battle eventually becomes. The Scar King is overwhelmed, and whether the crystal is destroyed or not, I think the cruel tyrant's reign will come to a decisive end by Kong's strength or Camazotz's brutality. So what would be the ramifications of Scar King's death here? First off, with her old master dead, Shimo gives up and most likely bows to Rodan. He's not stronger than her, she just doesn't want to fight, and bowing to Rodan would be the easiest path for Shimo to take. Secondly, Rodan and Tsuko eventually make their way back to the Scar King's lair, allowing Kong to find the extended family he's always wanted. And finally, a supercharged Godzilla will eventually make his way into the Hollow Earth to face off with his old rivals, merely to find the Scar King dead and Shimo under Rodan's control. Comically enough, Godzilla would not know that Rodan created this mess, just like Godzilla didn't know that Kong created the whole mess in the first place in Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. Which is great news for the avian, who can return to the surface with Godzilla's bitter approval, since he did take care of his old rivals. I should note, Godzilla would not like Shimo being under Rodan's control, but with Tiamat dead and his lair destroyed, Godzilla would only show up to this fight supercharged, and I'm not sure if he would feel comfortable fighting Rodan, Shimo, and Camazotz in this situation. Again, not that I think Godzilla would actually want to fight the trio here. So where does Rodan go now that he can return to the surface? Well, an indebted Kong makes Rodan an offer the Molten Demon does not refuse. For an exchange of protecting the natural order upon Skull Island, the island can fall under the avian's domain. Kong can't exactly keep hundreds of apes fed and alive on his old home after all. Well, not without completely ruining the ecosystem. Routine check-ins by Kong would certainly be required with this arrangement. Also, Godzilla would no doubt find this situation optimal. After all, it's not like he cared what happened on the island for thousands of years anyway. He can go about ensuring balance across the world, while Rodan stays to his little slice of the planet. And with that said, I can finally answer the question, what would happen if Rodan evolved? Well, such power would go to Rodan's head. Conflict with the Earth's Alpha would almost spell the Molten Demon's doom. But an unequal tenacity would eventually allow Rodan to claim a kingdom of his own. So, can Rodan keep Shimo and Camazotz under his control? Will the Iwi be safe under Rodan's protection? Sadly, I'll have to leave these questions unanswered for now, though I do hope to return to this scenario once Supernova releases in 2027. Don't worry though, a full story of these 3 parts will be releasing next Friday, so tune in for that. Until then, please leave a like, a comment, or subscribe. I'm GrayShot151, and I'll catch you all next time. Until then, later.